Hello, this is Dr. B. Krishnachandra Kirti, Assistant Professor of English, Dr. BRR Government College, Jedcherla, Palmore University. The topic for today's lesson is the fringe benefits of failure and the importance of imagination, written by J.K. Rowling. So, this is a part two of the lesson, and a brief recap of the earlier lesson is the writer J.K. Rowling on the graduation day of the students of Harvard University. She addressed the students, encouraging them, motivating them, inspiring them on their graduation day. She stressed on two aspects. First one, the benefits of failure, what failure is, and how they can redefine success and failure on their own terms, and the benefits of failure, what they can learn from failure, the life's lessons that failure is going to give one, and the second part of her speech or extract of her speech is imagination. So, what are the benefits of imagination? How important imagination is, how significant it is in our lives, and by being imaginative, what one can achieve. So, these are the two aspects. What I feared most for myself at your age was not poverty, but failure. So, J.K. Rowling, citing or quoting examples from her own life, she motivates them. She herself came from an impoverished or humble background. So she feared most failure. It's not poverty that scared her, that frightened her, but it was failure that she feared most at their age. That means at the age of graduation. Ultimately, we all have to decide for ourselves what constitutes failure. But the world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria if you let it. So, we have to decide, everyone has to decide for himself, for herself, what makes up failure, what constitutes, what composition the failure has. But the world is quite eager to give you a set of criteria if you let it. Before you want to decide for yourself what constitutes failure, the world itself will give you a set of criteria about failure. So I think it fair to say that by any conventional measure, a mere 7 years after my graduation day, I had failed on an epic scale. So after completing her graduation, after 7 years after the completion of her graduation day, she remained as a failure, an utter failure. She says on an epic scale, on a grand scale. That means utter failure. She experienced utter failure to the core, failure to the core. An exceptionally short lived marriage had imploded, and I was jobless. She experienced a series of setbacks or failures. Failure in marital life, she remained jobless. A lone parent, that means a mother without a father for her child, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. So, without being homeless, to live in Britain in modern that too, especially in modern Britain, is very difficult. She remained stranded in such a precarious situation. The fears that my parents had had for me and that I had had for myself had both come to pass, and by every usual standard. Her parents did not want her to see poor. They had experienced poverty and they did not want her daughter to experience poverty. And she did not want to see herself being poor. But both the fears of her parents and herself had come true, had been realized. I was the biggest failure I knew. She says, Rowling says that she was the biggest failure that she had known. Now, I am not going to stand here and tell you that failure is fun. That period of my life was a dark one, and I had no idea that there was going to be what the press has since represented as a kind of fairy tale resolution. I had no idea then how far the tunnel extended, and for a long time, any light at the end of it was a hope rather than a reality. She did not want, she did not mean to say that failure is easy. Failure should be perceived in a lighter vein. That failure is fun because she herself experienced failure and how she perceived at the time. The period of failure in her life was a dark period, she says, and she did not have any idea how long would it be and how long would it continue. And that dark tunnel, how far it extended, and for how much distance and how much time it will last. And any light at the end of the dark period or the tunnel would be a hope rather than a reality. A ray of hope is what is desired, is what is expected. So, why do I talk about the benefits of failure? Simply because failure meant stripping away of the inessential. So, why should we think of the failure and the benefits that accrue from it, that failure gives, that failure bestows upon all of us? Simply because failure strips away, takes away, seizes away all that is inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me. So she had come out of, she had cleared all the apprehensions she had, and she began to concentrate all her energy into finishing the only work that mattered to her. That means that she was interested in, that she believed that she could do. Had I really succeeded at anything else, I might never have found the determination to succeed in the one area I believed I truly belonged. The reason for her present day, for today's success, is because of her realization of the area in which she believed that she was strong, the area she believed that she truly belonged to. I was set free because my greatest fear had been realized, and I was still had a daughter whom I adored, and I had an old typewriter and a big idea. And she started from rags. So she had a daughter whom she loved very much, and an old typewriter and a big idea, creative idea. These were her investments. And so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. These are the things which she had, and basing on these solid foundation, she rebuilt her life. You might never fail on the scale I did, but some failure in life is inevitable. She experienced a failure on an epic scale, a grand failure, an utter failure in her life. And she says that the students of Harvard University might never fail on the scale she did, but they should expect to experience failure at some point of time, at one point of time in their lives or other. Failure in life is inevitable. No one can avoid it or escape it. It is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you fail by default. So, it is impossible to live without failure at something or other, at some point of time or other, unless one lives so cautiously, so carefully that they might as well not have lived. That means they might have lost life. That means literally they were dead. So living without failure is dying, is tantamounts to it equals to dying or experiencing death, in which case you fail by default. So experiencing death while alive is itself a big failure. So no one can escape failure at any cost, by any standard, by any means, by any measure. Failure gave me an inner security that I had never attained by passing examinations. So everyone fears failure, everyone experiences failure, no one can escape or avoid failure. So she viewed failure, she perceived failure from a positive set of mind or a positive frame of mind. She thought that failure gave her an inner security that she had never achieved or attained or obtained by passing examinations. Academic examinations, success in academic examinations never give one an inner security, but failure gives them inner security. Failure teaches one so many lessons of life, and by learning from the lessons of life, one gets inner security. Failure taught me things about myself that I could have learned no other way. So, failure taught Rowling so many things. She adopted introspection, she resorted to introspection, looking into herself. She tried to learn about herself that she could have learned no other way. Without experiencing failure, she could have never taken up introspection. I discovered that I had a strong will and more discipline than I had suspected. So sometimes it so happens that we do not know what we are, what our real strengths are, what our weaknesses are, how much disciplined we are, how what sort of a will we have. She discovered that she had a strong will and more discipline than she had ever expected. She suspected that she did not have that much discipline in her life. I also found out that I had friends whose value was truly above the price of rubies. And failure, adversity, difficult circumstances, hard times made her find that she had friends whose value was above money, above the currency, so which really mattered. The knowledge that you have emerged wiser and stronger from setbacks means that you are even ever after, secure in our ability to survive. So, the knowledge, that type of knowledge or that sort of knowledge which enables us to become wiser and stronger, to emerge victorious or triumphant from setbacks, to overcome setbacks or troubles or problems, makes us secure our ability to survive. You will never truly know yourself or the strength of your relationships until both have been tested by adversity. So, unless adversity, unfavorable conditions, difficult situations, crisis, hard times, or hardships make us know, enable us know the strength of ourselves, a knowledge of ourselves, and the strength of our relationships. Such knowledge is a true gift. Such knowledge obtained after being tested by adversity is a true gift for all that painfully won, and it has been worth more than any qualification I ever earned. So, one can earn academic qualifications easily, but knowledge of self and the strength of our relationships is a true gift, and it is worth more than any qualification we can ever earn. Personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisition or achievement. Your qualifications, your CV are not your life. Though you will meet many people of my age and older who confuse the two. So, knowledge of self and strength of our relationships is a rare gift, is a true gift. And personal happiness lies in knowing that life is not a checklist of acquisition or achievement. We may earn so many academic qualifications or properties, assets, and we can enrich our CV, but that is not life. And these things will not give us happiness. And people get confused between the two, real happiness and the illusory happiness obtained or measured by counting the acquisitions or achievements or qualifications. Life is difficult and complicated and beyond anyone's total control, and the humility to know that will enable you to survive its vicissitudes. So, life is a complicated concept, a different, a difficult concept, and beyond anyone's total control. Life will not be in our hands. We cannot control it. It's beyond our total control. We feel that we can control it, but we can control it to some extent only. That is the reality. And the humility, the modesty, the humbleness to know that life is difficult, complicated, and beyond one's control will enable one to survive its truth, the truth of life. Now, you might think that I chose my second theme, the importance of imagination. So, having said, having discussed failure, what failure is, what constitutes failure, what are the benefits of failure, and how to face failure, and what life is, Rowling comes to the second aspect of her discussion or essay speech, that is imagination. Because of the part it played in rebuilding my life, but that's not wholly so. And from rags to riches, her journey of life continued, and she rebuilt her life basing on two aspects: learning from the failures, life's lessons from the failures, from her failure, and rebuilding her life on imagination. Though I personally will defend the value of bedtime stories, to my last gasp, I have learned to value imagination in a much broader sense. So, she listened to bedtime stories in the Indian context, generally speaking. Grandmothers used to tell bedtime stories at night for the grandchildren, and Rowling gives utmost importance to the bedtime stories. I have learned to value imagination in a much broader sense. So the bedtime stories tell us the importance of imagination. To create stories, bedtime stories, imagination is needed. But Rowling says that imagination, we should we should perceive imagination in a much broader sense. Imagination is not only the uniquely human capacity to envision that which is not, and therefore the fount of all invention and innovation. So, imagination means fiction, fictitious aspects. So, imagination is not the only uniquely human capacity, it is the human capacity to think and foresee what is not, and therefore, it is the fountain of all invention. It is the source of all invention and innovation, new novelty. In its arguably most transformative and revelatory capacity, it is the power that enables us to empathize with human whose experiences we have never shared. So, imagination, now she tells us the importance and significance of imagination. Imagination is beyond dispute, undisputably the most transformative. So it is the agent of change. It has the power to bring about change. It can affect change and revelatory capacity. It reveals what one has, what one is. So, imagination has two characteristics: transformatory power and revelatory power. It is the power that enables us to empathize, to understand, to show concern for others who are in distress, who are in need, who are in turmoil, who are in crisis, who are under stress, with human whose experiences we have never shared. Unlike any other creature on this planet, humans can learn and understand without having experienced. There can be three kinds of people. One, the first category of people who learn from the experiences of others without having experienced themselves, whether it is failure or success, whatever it is. The second category of people are those who learn when they experience themselves. The third category of people are the least ones who do not experience even if they experience themselves. And here Rowling focuses on the first aspect, first category of people. Unlike any other creature on this planet, humans can learn and understand without having experienced. Not all humans, but some humans can learn, understand without having experience. They learn lessons from the experiences of others on seeing, on knowing. They can think themselves into other people's places. They can throw themselves into the shoes of others. They imagine themselves to be in their position if I were. Of course, this is a power like my brand of fictional magic that is morally neutral. One might use such an ability to manipulate or control just as much as to understand or sympathize. So, we all are supposed to empathize or sympathize with others, have feelings or emotions of concern for others or show feelings or concern for others. And many prefer not to exercise their imaginations at all. Now, Rowling focuses on the category of people who never exercise their imagination, who do not have the power of imagination, or who do not use their power of imagination. They choose to remain comfortably within the bounds of their own experience, never troubling to wonder how it would feel to have been born other than they are. So, unless they feel, they experience the hardships or the difficulties, they never try to imagine what difficulties are uh, when others face them. They can refuse to hear screams or to peer inside cages. They do not care when other people scream, when other people cry, when other people weep. They never care to look into, or they never care to know. They can close their minds and hearts to any suffering that does not touch them personally. So they close their minds, they close their ears and eyes and hearts to any kind of suffering that does not come to themselves personally. They can refuse to know, they refuse to hear, they refuse to understand. I might be tempted to envy people who can live that way, except that I do not think they have any fewer nightmares than I do. And for their indifferent attitude, for their coldness, Rowling says that she sometimes might be tempted to feel envious about such people who can live that way without caring for the problems of others. Choosing to live in narrow spaces leads to a form of mental agoraphobia. So, people living in such narrow spaces, people living in such shut doors, cages, they fear, they experience a kind of phobia, agoraphobia, a kind of fear, and that brings its own terrors, and they have to experience the consequences. I think the willfully unimaginative see more monsters. Those who suppress willing suspension of imagination, they see more monsters, more problems. They are often more afraid. Those who are unimaginative, they are more afraid. What is more, those who choose not to empathize enable real monsters. Not being unimaginative is one thing, and not being empathetic is another aspect. Empathetic or empathizing means showing or having feelings or emotions for others, having concern for others, especially when they are in need or distress or problems, troubles. They enable real monsters, for without ever committing an act of outright evil ourselves, we collude with it through our own apathy. So, for our carelessness, apathy is a feeling having no feeling or emotion for others, not caring for others' feelings. One of the many things I learned at the end of the classics corridor down which I ventured at the age of 18 in search of something I could not then define was this, written by the Greek author Plutarch: what we achieve inwardly will change outer reality. So, when she was at the age of 18, she visited, she stepped into the classics corridor, reading the classics of the past, with the works of ancients, and she quoted uh, a sentence written by Greek author Plutarch: what we achieve inwardly will change outer reality. So our inward feelings, our inward essence will change outer reality. So our outward frame of mind, outward behavior, to put it in a simple way, our outward behavior will be changed by our inward or inner feelings. That is an astonishing statement and yet proven 1,000 times every day of our lives. And Rowling says that this is absolutely true. This is a truthful statement, astonishing statement, and it had been proved 1,000 times every day in our lives. It expresses in part our inescapable connection with the outside world, the fact that we touch other people's lives simply by existing. So, our mere existence affects the people outside, the lives of people who live outside us. That means our inner minds and the lives of people who live outside, who live in the outside world, get connected simply by our existence. But how much more are you, Harvard graduates of 2008, likely to touch other people's lives? And now she directly asks questions, the Harvard graduates of 2008. How many of you, or how much more of you, are likely to touch other people's lives? How many of you, and in what magnitude and direction are you going to influence or touch other people's lives? How many of you are going to be empathetic and sympathetic, not being apathetic? Your intelligence, your capacity for hard work and education you have earned and received give you unique status and unique responsibilities. So, your intelligence, your capacity for hard work, your education, the education you have received and earned give you unique status and more than all these things, unique responsibilities. You do have a sense of responsibility towards the society which you cannot ignore. Even your nationality sets you apart. Irrespective of nationality, you have a sense of responsibility towards the fellow beings, others. The great majority of you belong to the world's only remaining superpower. So, youth are considered to be the superpower of the world, and you belong to that section. The way you vote, the way you live, the way you protest, the pressure you bring to bear on your government has an impact way beyond your borders. Bereft of borders, beyond borders, irrespective of borders, immaterial of borders. It all depends on the way you cast your oath for the right leader, the way you live your lifestyle, the way you protest, how you raise your voice against injustice or oppression or whatever, the pressure you bring to bear on your government, how you pressurize, how you emphasize your issues to reflect on your government has an impact way beyond your borders. That is your privilege and your burden. That is your right. That is your status. And that is your burden also. It is your responsibility and at the same time it's your right also. If you choose to use your status and influence to raise your voice on behalf of those who have no voice, if you choose to identify not only with the powerful but with the powerless, if you retain the ability to imagine yourself into the lives of those who do not have your advantages, then it will not only be your proud families who celebrate your existence, but thousands and millions of people whose reality you have helped change. You should be the change. You should be the change first. The sort of change which you expect. You should be the agent of change who should bring or who should affect the change you wish or you want to have. If you choose to use your status, if you use your status and influence to raise your voice in support of those who have no voice, voiceless, You should stand by the voiceless, represent your voice to identify with the powerless also, in addition to the to supporting the powerful. Ability to imagine yourself, to live, to step into the shoes of others who do not have your advantages, those people who have lesser privileges than what you enjoy. Then you will be proud, you can take pride uh, for being helping thousands and millions of people whom you have changed, whose life you have changed. We do not need magic to change the world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves already. We have the power to imagine better. So we need not have a magic wand to change the world. We have that power inside us, inside ourselves. The only thing is we should have the power to imagine. We need to have the power of imagination and apply that power of imagination. And tomorrow, I hope that even if you remember not a single word of mine, you remember those of Seneca, another of those old Romans I met when I fled down the classics corridor in retreat from career ladders in search of ancient wisdom. To have better power of imagination, I have gone through the classics corridor, escaping the career ladders for to escape for a while the academic ladders, career ladders in search of ancient wisdom to gain from the ancient wisdom. I have gone through the works of Seneca. You might not remember even a single word of mine, but you can remember the words of Seneca, ancient Roman. As is a tale, so is life. So life is like a tale, not how long it is, but how good it is. It is not the length of the tale, or it's not the length of the life. It's not how long we live that matters. How good it is. What matters is how good the tale is, or how good, how worth is our life. The life we lead is what matters. I wish you all very good lives. She concludes wishing all the best for the Harvard graduates.